So today has been a call to courage, a call to look beneath the surface, to confront the hidden fractures, and to face the truths we've long whispered but rarely said out loud. We've heard about trauma, identity, and the weight of history. And we've been challenged to understand that if we are to truly break the cycle, we cannot simply repair systems, but we must heal people. There's perhaps no one better placed to lead that charge than our General Secretary. She stands at the intersection of past, present, and future, carrying the lessons of our history, the urgency of our now, and the vision of what Barbados can and must become. Ladies and gentlemen, the General Secretary of the Barbados Workers Union, Comrade Toni Moore.
Thanks, Comrade Shane Jones. And Reverend Elisius Joseph, I start by telling you that I am not one of those women that people can shame easily, otherwise I won't be in this job. So I want y'all to applaud me for how I look today. Members of the Cabinet of Barbados, President of the Senate, members of the Senate and House of Assembly, Executive Director of the BEC, I should have said permanent secretaries as well, employers, members of the Executive Council, comrades in the labor movement, friends of the BWU, delegates, friends, any and everybody that I left out, good afternoon. And I want to say to you all, thank you. Thank you for coming here and coming here early this morning. We had a full house at 9:05 a.m. and that says something. Thank you also for staying with us through what we hoped would have been a kind of unorthodox opening, introducing a panel in the opening session. But thank you for staying with us this morning as we explored a very, very critical issue, breaking the cycle. But before that, I want to say a very special thank you to our chaplain who is always with us. Retired from the Anglican Church and the official duties that he had as Archdeacon, but ever present with us here in the Barbados Workers Union as our chaplain. We thank you so much for starting us out. You know, the chaplain has a way of being so calm that even when you're feeling anxious and so on, he comes in with that very calm voice, even before invoking God's presence. With a very calm voice, he can get everything settled and feeling okay. What the Minister of Labor didn't say, and a little discussion that we were having upstairs before we came down, part of the reason for us coming down late is because the minister was so anxious to get here to declare his first conference open in seven years that he may have offset another driver into running into the back of his car. So he had an accident this morning, not even that setback stop him from being here. The car doesn't look good, and I will still encourage him when he leaves here to seek out medical attention, just as a precaution, as he's not getting any younger. But even upstairs, as the minister came in, you know, concerned about being late and everything, chaplain was so calm that it had the whole room and space, and it has continued throughout our morning, I can say. So thank you, chaplain, and thank you to our fraternal greetings, which were brought to us from our little sister, the BSTU. Thank you, Mary, as always. And I want to say a very special thank you to the Executive Director of the BEC, Sheena, for coming out and really, really demonstrating, not only in words, but also in her action, the commitment that she has to uplifting and working in partnership with the Barbados Workers Union to make workspaces better. Pastor Elisius Joseph, I want to thank you for setting the stage for reflection and framing our discussion on breaking the cycle. Your honesty, your frankness, your clarity allowed us to be able to have some grounding into the realities that we must confront. Very often we think we know, or even when we hear things as raw as we might hear them, we get on as if we are unfamiliar with the realities. But I thank you for providing us a timely reminder of the issues that we confront. And to our panel, Reverend Adrian Smith, Mr. Roland Maloney, and Paul Yvette. Paul Yvette, when I heard your bio and I heard that you were at the engaged in your work for 25 years, I was there like I was in university with Paul Yvette. She got me feeling old all of a sudden. Then I studied that I was here at the Barbados Workers Union for 21 years. So I want to say thanks to our panel for a discussion that was very robust, was very respectful, and although we would have wanted the opportunity to have you participate in some conversation and we couldn't do that in the interest of time, I am sure that the discussion was also resolute and we have been able to partake in a way that will cause us to leave here feeling a lot more focused and conscious and aware of what is going on in our environment. Comrades, bet who bet you is not just a Bajanism. Bet who bet you, when it is expressed as the commitment, it signifies everything that we in the Barbados Workers Union hope to promote. And that is the fact that solidarity, mutual commitment, mutual dedication, where individuals support each other's efforts, even where we don't always see eye to eye. It means that through that mutual cooperation, we can derive shared purpose and we can confront challenges with a united front. Today, we are grateful that in this opening ceremony, we have been able to do just that. The Executive Council thought it necessary not only to engage our delegates and observers, but to collaborate with our partners, the employers who support our workplaces and whose task and responsibility it is to support our workers, and our friends as we commit to in the best way we can to an issue that is impacting us at the individual level, it's impacting us in our households, and of course it's impacting us in our workspaces. We need to wrestle this issue to the ground. It's okay to say that we are not going to become like others, and we accept that, and perhaps we are grateful for it. But we know that in this 166 square miles, because of our size, because of our smallness, things touch us and impact us in a different way. And we are committed as a Barbados Workers Union, who is not only interested in the bread and butter issues, we are committed to national well-being, and it is the reason why we do this. The Barbados Workers Union continues to be a key cornerstone in this country. Minister said 2 months, but is 5 weeks and another day or so, we will be 84 years old. And we are proud of that. And we are proud that over those years, we have been able to bring meaningful change to the social fabric of Barbados. We are proud that at 83 years old, almost 84 years old, we don't look it as an organization. We are glad that while institutions might be struggling, and we too struggle. We struggle for all the reasons that you've heard this morning, but we are glad that we are not fledgling and that we are still making an impact, and that our visioning has remained so solid over the years that even when we don't get things right, we continue to follow the mandate that workers have set for us. We are excited, therefore, every time we have an annual delegates conference. Our conference is the highest decision-making body, and it is where you, the delegates and observers, have a very important opportunity not to listen to us, merely to listen to us, but to direct the Executive Council on how it must represent the interests, your interests, and the interests of workers at large. Comrades and friends, as I said, we don't always get it right, but ever focused on our mission, we always are brought back to the center to ensure that we can guarantee greater protections and enforcement and uphold clearer standards for workers and their families. At this point, before I go any further in closing, I want to celebrate our staff. I want to place on record my profound appreciation for the staff here at the Barbados Workers Union. And I want to encourage them to stand up wherever they are, scattered all over the place. I want to encourage you to stand, those of you who recognize yourself as staff. And it's important because very often people hear very few voices. You will hear the General Secretary, you might hear our officers from time to time when there is, especially if there's strike action, whoever is the officer in charge. But our staff, and look at them, very young, most of them in age, but together, very young as a team. And we are out there organizing on a daily basis. We are negotiating, we are communicating, we are educating, we are administering. Simply put, we are out there helping, working for you, our members, but not only you, but for this country at large. And I think that this is a moment for special applause because as General Secretary, sometimes I know I can grate them a bit. And some of them grate me too. But this is one of the opportunities that I personally want to say thank you, and on your behalf, I extend that to them as well. I'm proud. It's always good to have a team. You can say it's always good to have a team that shares your vision, shares the mission of the organization, and has the energy to do it. Tomorrow, as you've heard, we go to our business session where, among other things, we will elect a new executive. I am happy that offering themselves for service on the Executive Council, we have 7 new members that will be facing the electorate in here. And that is a good thing, because I said at a time when organizations or institutions find themselves struggling, when you have new faces coming in, that's also a sign of renewal, and that is something that we can be happy about. In recent months, we have been tackling a challenge that has confronted too many. And this challenge has not only been present in recent months, but we have had to ramp it up a bit. And that's the challenge that relates to subcontracting. This conference over the 83 years has by resolution, has by discussion in many respects been concerned about the whole issue of short-term contracts. And the racket of subcontracting is one that is pervading the Barbados labor market in ways that is causing many workers discomfort and undermining many of the gains that we have worked on over the years. And one of the areas that we have been finding it most prevalent is in the construction industry. And yes, I called it by name. I said a racket, because where we find decent work being broke into pieces, where we find rights being treated as if they are optional, and where we find accountability seeming to vanish, seeming not to be in place, that speaks of a system that potentially can go out of control, and it speaks of racket, because you have a situation where contractors are engaging other contractors who are engaging other contractors, and then you're not able to keep control of accountability in the ways that matter. And as the minister in his address to us said a short while ago, we are happy that the Barbados Workers Union continues to be at the vanguard of raising issues. And I pause here to say that I am extremely proud that even as the government continues to work in the interests of all, that they have expressed very openly, not only by embracing the Barbados Workers Union as a member of the party in government through my election, but they have demonstrated that wherever we raise issues and bring them to the fore, that there is a commitment to address it progressively, even if not always with the speed that we in the Executive Council would like. So in recent months, we have been raising the issue in the construction of the subcontracting issue that's pervading the labor market, and in particular, as it relates to the construction industry. And as you've heard, it is through that we have agreed on a number of measures that don't only involve talk. And among these, the jobs registry that was made mention of, and the fact that the Labor Department will be engaged in a system where vacancies can be published, all in an effort to bring more transparency to the labor market. And that when we see these crazy ads in papers of professional tree claimers, requests for professional tree claimers, chefs and different things, that we can have some means, some way of measuring what really is taking place. The BWU is therefore happy that we are not making noise out there, just making noise and seemingly moving in a directionless, critical way on issues. It is so easy sometimes, and I actually feel it's a lot easier to stand up on a soapbox or to stand up on the outside and look on at things as they're happening and criticize every single thing that is taking place. When you don't have accountability, you can do that. Keep noise for the sake of keeping noise, maybe for making people laugh, for raising flags, but that's the end of it. But an organization like ours, over the last 83 plus years, has had to remain very focused, conscious ever of the fact that when we raise flags, we raise it not to hear ourselves, not for the sake of exciting people, but for the sake of bringing meaningful change. And that is what we are about: action. If you want to trust institutions, you don't trust institutions who just make noise and that's it. You need to have trust in institutions that when they speak up, when they act up, that results happen. And we are glad that we continue to do that on your behalf. But what does it mean? The jobs registry and the changes Minister spoke about won't only impact construction, but as we see it, it would be a win for every worker. But we don't accept that as bringing results in itself. There's a number of efforts that will have to be coordinated over the next few months to make sure that the results that are being sought, the objectives that are being sought, are reached. Today we say cheers to you, the members of the Barbados Workers Union, who hold us accountable, therefore, for advocacy on your behalf. My communications and information officer always makes mention of the fact that we don't blow our trumpet enough. And perhaps I take responsibility for that. Perhaps it's how I was raised. Perhaps it's just my nature. Because I've always believed that by your fruits, people will know who you are. I just divert a little bit to recall when I was standing for election. There's a certain comrade still on the Executive Council that asked me about my campaign. And I said, campaign? And it wasn't arrogance. Campaign, I don't need to campaign. If people don't want to vote for me, they don't want to vote for me. And I hope that none of you delegates who are standing for election get on like that, because you might not get any votes. I've come to realize you've got to work for votes subsequent to that. But I said that. But Shane continues to challenge, because it's a big bugbear of his, that a minimum wage, for instance, was set in Barbados 3 years ago. And as far as he sees it, the BWU has not taken enough credit for that. So I paused to big up our workers, Shane, conscious of the advice that you're giving, because I do remember when we stood with the workers at G4S to demand respect and fair wages for them. When we stood with those workers to demand a level playing field in the security sector, that sparked national conversation that triggered national movement towards a national minimum wage. I recall well when the workers of C.O. Williams 3 years ago went on strike. And they went on strike for fair wages and fair pay. And in those discussions as well, the idea of a level playing field in construction came up. And what did that lead to? That led to minimum standards being set for public contracts, those seeking public contracts in Barbados. And we must thank the Barbados Employers Confederation for working with the BWU to ensure minimum rates are set, and for their commitment to working with us to ensure that minimum standards are observed more broadly. And we should recall just 2 years ago when the workers in hotels complained that after they sacrificed everything in COVID and tourism was booming again, and they weren't getting the fair treatment that humanity merited, but that surely their sacrifice deserved. We stood with those workers, sparking a national discussion that led to the Labor Concessions Act, an act that says if you're going to benefit from the public purse by getting concessions, then you must do right by workers. And how were those minimum standards determined? By using the collective agreement of over 60 years between the BWU and the BHTA to determine those minimum standards. What does it say to us? Not when the General Secretary speaks, but when you, the workers, mobilize and you push us into advocacy, and when we stand together, that we don't only reap benefits that will touch us, but it even touches those who are not members of the Barbados Workers Union. So to you, our members, to all workers in Barbados, we salute you and we thank you for keeping our feet to the fire. So, Sarai, and this is a tribute to you as well. I was so honored to be standing in Parliament just a couple weeks ago in the House of Assembly to debate the Family Leave Act. I do recall when I came here young in 2004, awful day. I do remember that one of the things that the union was now advocating for and pushing for more fiercely was to see paternity leave included in as many of our collective agreements as possible. And I do remember the instruction that was given, or the reminder that was given, that the approach of the union is to make sure we bring sensitization through collective agreements. If we can get it in as many places as possible, then the country will start to accept it and be ready for it, so that when the moment comes, they can embrace it. And the Barbados Workers Union for over 2 decades has been pushing and has it included in so many agreements that the BEC didn't even think it was anything to find objection with, but in fact, worked with us in a structure of works committee to ensure that we can have it included. We're glad that the BEC also shares the commitment with us that this 3-week paternity leave and not even the 14 weeks that has been extended by 2 weeks for maternity leave is enough. But it is something that we will work together on to ensure that workers get more of what they deserve. And now we anticipate the strengthening of the Labor Department that has come through national discussion as well. Bet who bet you is a lesson that is plain for us to see. And we don't boast, but we want you, workers and members of this union, to recognize the potential that there is in our solidarity. when the BWU pushes, we see Barbados moving. And that is something that we must therefore continue to do. But I also want to reflect very briefly on some of the difficult conversations that we have been having. And I think of the difficult conversation that we've been having around the strengthening of security at our borders. Now, this has been a very difficult conversation spanning some 18 months, at least a little over 18 months. And I must contextualize it because regionally there were discussions and commitments that the security had to be strengthened at the borders, and other countries actually moved to legislating truth verification. Barbados took a different approach. We took the approach of discussions towards getting our workers to understand the importance of strengthening our borders. Because when we speak about the issues that we spoke about this morning, crime impacting the society and so on, it's important to take tangible steps towards ensuring that we can curb or stymie the extent to which it impacts us. During the last 18 months to 20 months, we have been discussing lie detector tests, if you would want to call it that, and I-Detect as methods to be used in bringing security, greater security to our borders. These discussions were rough because I think although people in principle appreciate the need for us to go there, workers who feel that they will be offset and brought under scrutiny would have a lot of questions and so surrounding it. I remember leading those discussions there was one worker, I am not going to look around to see if the worker is in here, who told me that I have to decide if I want to be a general secretary or if I wanted to be a member of parliament, because I didn't seem to be speaking for them. You know, it's amazing that when things are going well, and when you get all the legislation and benefits and so on, you speak for people, but from the time you disagree or have a different view that's not theirs, you seemingly no longer for them. So I was told I had to decide which hat I was going to wear. And there's only one hat that I ever wear, and that's a hat of principle and service. And if y'all didn't get that by now, too bad. But Revs, I must admit that my response was very swift, vigorous, possibly brutal, because I remain very conscious that I will never be reduced to being a man pleaser. I will always uphold the principles that I believe in and those that I have sworn onto, whether as General Secretary of the Barbados Workers Union or as a member of Parliament or any other role that I hold. And I was very clear then, as I am now, that if ever I am called to submit to being a man pleaser or a woman pleaser, y'all won't have to push me. I will walk. Because there comes a time in our lives, whether as individuals or institutions, that we have to understand that we have to set ourselves apart. And we have to make sacrifices. And sometimes we have to feel a little burning and unease to steady an organization and to steady a society and to deliver for people in the way our mission says and instructs us to make a difference and to improve the well-being of all. And for that, I have no apologies. When the difficult conversations come, we will have them and we will take action, whatever the result. Doing the right thing, standing up against wrong, it comes from the heart. It has to come from the heart and not merely from the head. If partnership and service is to mean anything, therefore, it means that we must use every platform available to us to deliver outcomes for working people, not in words, not in YouTube shows, not in strikes alone, but we will serve in spirit and in truth. So what's next? Enforcement will be our watchword and song. And I would advise the driver of X8927 that if you don't want enforcement to come to you, that you should cooperate with those who are asking you to kindly remove your vehicle to allow someone who was part of the program this morning to leave. X8927, kindly remove your vehicle. So enforcement has to be our watchword and song. Speed and fairness must accompany it, Minister, and that is what we will urge. We will continue to push for workplace well-being and productivity. Today's panel reminded us that you cannot talk about productivity if you do not talk about people. Substance abuse, stress, financial strain, they don't stop at the institution gate. The next step is for us to continue to push for workplace agreements that pair compassion with prevention and access to counseling and treatment, peer support, non-discriminatory return to work arrangements. We have situations where people who have had a checkered past and now want to do good can't get into workplaces because people keep holding it over their heads. These are things that we will continue to work on. Let me speak very directly to employers who are still in the room. Partnership is not a slogan. As you heard from the executive director of the BEC, it must be a strategy. A stable, skilled, respected workforce will be your competitive advantage. I've promised some of the employers coming here that I will not use this podium as a point of attack on them this morning, but I think enough said there. To our members, the next step belongs to all of us. The next step belongs to all of us. Bet who bet you. Organize your workplaces. Strengthen your divisions. Elect strong shop stewards. Elect strong council members. Use the grievance process. Bring evidence. Let us stand together. The union, this union, is not an office on the hill. It is a movement that is in the hands of all of us. So I say to you as we approach our business session in the next 24 hours or so, critique us if you must. I was reminded when I was preparing of a call on brass tacks when we had our big KFC victory earlier this year. I want you to big up the workers at KFC a little bit. When we had our KFC victory this year, there was one caller that was commenting, where the union now come from? Them know they had these problems all of these years. And there was another caller who said, you know, the union just can't win. Damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. But let me say plainly, if we have to choose damned if you do or damned if you don't, we can always be damned because we do. We will always choose to act. We will choose to protect wages, to enforce standards, to clear backlogs, to address rackets, whether it is in subcontracting or wherever they are. We will work with the like-minded, whether they are in the labor movement, whether they're employers, whether it's civil society, the church, wherever. We will continue to work to ensure that Bet Who Bet You is not merely a slogan, but it is a standard, and it mirrors the standards that we in the Barbados Workers Union have set. As I said, tomorrow we choose a new executive, and we honor those who have served, and we welcome all those who will serve. But remember, as you come into service for the next 2 years, election is not a finish line. It is just a starting gun. Comrades, let us commit to taking the next step together. One more step for justice. One more step for dignity. One more step for the Barbados Workers Union. One more step for Barbados. Thanks again for showing up in your numbers. You know, there was another conference recently and the chairs outnumbered the voices. But today you have reminded not only the Barbados Workers Union, but Barbados, that when we work and when we work for what is real, people will respect us. People will follow. Thank you. Solidarity forever.